This is Laricy Live, and I'm your host, Matt Laricy. We're giving you unfiltered access to the world of real estate, where we can cover the market trends, news, and honest answers to keep you ahead of the real estate game. Laricy Live is brought to you by Lincoln Title. Lincoln Title is the best and most efficient title company in Chicago and is the best place to close your property. This podcast is brought to you by Titan Builders. Titan Builders have been remodeling condos and homes in the Chicagoland area for over 35 years. Whether it's remodeling your kitchen or bathroom or getting your home ready for sale, Mike and Mark are your go-to guys. Laricy Live is brought to you by Guaranteed Rate and Ben Cohen. Ben Cohen is the #1 lender in Illinois and can close your loan in as fast as 8 days. All right, so here we go here. We're entering the end of summer. Summer is over, right? Like it's coming to an end, and now we're heading into new territory. We're heading into fall. Now, right now, this comes out later. It's August 22nd, so something crazy can happen. That's when this is getting filmed. But what I want to talk about is what's going to be happening in the fall market. I'm talking about the fall market is going to be a fall push. So I've talked about this before. You have 4 quadrants in the market, okay? You have the spring wave, you got the summer shift, you got the fall market, and you got the holiday market. Now, inside those quadrants, there's little things that happen, like in the spring wave, there's something called prime time, right? And in the fall market, we normally see something happen of what I say we either see a frightful fall or a fall push. Well, I think this year we're going to see a fall push. So I do think it's going to be a very strong market. Now, me saying it's going to be a fall push doesn't mean that the market, fall push doesn't mean like it's going to be like better than like a February market, okay? It just means it's not going to be like absolutely terrible. Because when people think of fall, they think nothing sells. I think we're going to see some good action. I actually think September is probably going to end up performing better than August. But we just have to understand is that it's just going to be slower than the spring. So don't freak out. And this is the fall. I'm excited for September and October. I think they're going to be like very good months, much better than normal. Now, how do I think, when we look at the fall and heading into this fall push, how do I think the summer market went? I think the summer market went very well. We talked about this in the Dog's Day of Summer podcast, and as summer is wrapping up here, it's aligning with what we thought. We thought the end of the summer would be kind of slow, especially the last couple weeks of August. It's been slow. Don't get me wrong. Somebody out there is going to be like, hey, we just got outbid. I just had a client get outbid. They offered like $100,000 over ask price, and they said we weren't even close. So like somebody out there is going to be like, yeah, see, I told you, man, it's still really hot. Yeah, listen, guys, certain properties. You want to buy in, East Lincoln Park, under $1 million for a move-in ready 3-bedroom that checks everybody's boxes. Like, yeah, that's going to get multiple bids on Christmas Day itself, okay? We're talking like generally speaking, the market's definitely slowed up a little bit. Inventory's starting to slowly build. We're starting to see a lot of price cuts happening. I've read numerous articles how like nobody's getting ask price anymore in most of America. Now, Chicago's different, okay? Everything's local. But I'm saying is like we're starting to see the market kind of change, and the summer market was strong, and it kind of tapered off a little bit at the end of August as expected. And here's a good way to look at it. I was at a networking event yesterday for realtors, and shout out Lance Kirchner for inviting me. I appreciate it. He's at Compass, good guy, real good guy, stand-up guy. And there was a lot of really good agents that were there, and it was fun talking with all of them. But I got there around like 6:45, 7 o'clock. Stayed there for an hour. I got kids. I went home. I had a drink. Okay, but in my head, and I was talking about this. Some of the agents I was talking to, it's like it's 6:45, 7 o'clock, and this place was packed. Lance knows how to throw a party, but this place was packed. And I was like, how many people do you think would have been here in March at 6:45? 0, right? And I brought that up to a lot of agents. Like, yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Like, I haven't had an appointment like all day. Like, and some people were at a golf outing beforehand, and they had just had nothing. Now, I'm not saying that means they're bad agents. So somebody's out there's like, well, I'm really busy. Like, listen, guys, I'm super busy all the time too. But I'm saying is that like, you can at this time of year, you can move appointments around a little bit to make it be a little bit more manageable, so you're not going to like drowning. And that's kind of what we saw happen in the summer market. Okay, and I think it performed very well. And I think when we look back, we're going to notice the summer market was probably one of the best summer markets we've seen in a couple of years. It's just not spring. And that's where people started getting confused. Is they're like, well, it's just not as good as spring. So when we look at that, like, how do we think that's going to affect the fall? So these are the things of what I'm looking at and what we have to prepare for as we go into this fall push. Big one we have to look at is the downtown markets, right? We're still seeing a tale of two cities. We're seeing this kind of continue to grow even further away of like the outskirts compared to downtown. I mean, Cranes did shout out Dennis Rodkin, he's a great writer. Did an article about like how some prices have gone back to the 90s. The 90s. Think about that. I'm gonna make a post today about that. Like the 90s. Where in the country can you get something that somebody paid for in like 1995? Like that's insane, right? And so I do think that the fall market's still gonna be very tough on downtown. And I think the only people who are gonna sell downtown are, when we look back on this 5 years from now, I'm gonna call this period the Great Reset. The people who reset their prices, the people who reset their expectations. A big thing I've been thinking about why I do think the fall market might be good for the downtown market and why I think we might have a little push down there is AI, right? Artificial intelligence, right? Isn't that the buzzword right now? I'm all AI. Everybody always talks about it too. Everybody's like, oh man, what are you doing with AI? And we're going to do a podcast on AI and real estate and stuff like that and how we think it'll change. But I've been thinking about this a lot. I think about a lot of things, I tend to be a hard thinker. I can visualize a lot of stuff. And one of the main things I was thinking about is like, okay, well, nobody's been going back to work ever. And, these companies are starting to fire a lot of people, because AI can do a lot of, white collar jobs. Low white collar jobs are probably the people who should worry the most about AI is entry level white collar jobs. Those are going to be the first people to be wiped out. And I keep thinking to myself, well, if I was in one of those jobs, how would I want to try to be saved? Well, if it was me, I'd go into the office, right? Because like the likelihood to be fired would be lower, right? Because like anybody out there that's owned a company or been in a position of power, that like firing people is just part of life. Like I fired many people. I'll fire people again in the future. Not you, Jess. Not you. Jess is safe. She just walks in. She's like, I'm getting fired. No, you're not, Jess. You were safe. Okay? It's a safe zone for you. Now, the other people that walk in after you, I don't know, But I'm just saying. But no, my point is that like, anybody that's been in a position of power, is upper management, whatever, has had to fire people. And I would class myself as a pretty hardened, cold asshole person. Okay. Like I'm not like warm and fuzzy. Like, I don't think when you think of Matt Laricy, you're like, oh my God, that guy's like big heart, like nice guy, like Mr. Cuddle. I don't think that's, do you think about that when you think of me, Mr. Cuddle, Mr. Nice Guy? No. Yeah. So like if I'm not known as a very like hard on my shoulder emotional guy, I struggle with firing people because like if you really like somebody, it's hard to fire them, right? Like even if they're shitty at their job. Like I've had a lot of people that work for me that I love. Like I just think they're awesome people. They're cool. I get along with them. I generally like just enjoy talking with them. And I like people. Like I like to talk if you haven't noticed. And like then I got to let them go, right? And it's like, I'll wait like 6 months sometimes. And like I'll talk about with some people like, why don't you just rip the Band-Aid off? It's like, I don't know. I like them so much. And like, I want them to get better. Like in my head, I'm like, well, if I tell them this, like maybe they will get better. And I keep giving them more chances. And they just keep not being able to do it. It's like, that's not a good way to do business. Okay. Because that's bad for business. And even though I'm more of a cold person, I'm sure in corporate America, they rip that Band-Aid off a lot quicker. But my point in this tangent is that like, if I struggle with firing people that I like, and I'm a hardened individual, these people who are softer that work at big companies, I'm sure, I don't care what anybody tells me, I'm sure they fight for people that they like at their office. And the point of this is that when we look at the fall push in the downtown markets is that I think a lot of people are starting to get a little scared because I talk to a lot of people and they say this, of AI maybe taking their jobs. Now they're like, I want to be a little bit more present. Because like if I'm working at a big corporation and AI can do something and I have to fire Steve Smith, I don't know who Steve Smith is. Like I met him at the interview. We're on some like Zoom meetings every now and then. I don't really know much about the guy. We're never at any networking events. We're not at like, after hours grabbing some beers or anything like that. Like Steve Smith's just like, he's just a guy. And then we create, our company buys an AI thing and we create something that like can pretty much do Steve Smith's job almost as good as Steve can do. Like, I don't care about Steve. Steve's the guy I met like 3 times. I'll fire him in 2 seconds. I won't even think about it. Like it wouldn't even cross my mind. I'd be like, yeah, Steve's gone. Like I do that with like people like that are like AI stuff or like virtual things that do for us. Like, yeah, they're gone. Like I don't even think I'd like lose 0 sleep over it. Could care less. And I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to that. And you know how I know that? Because a lot of my clients tell me that. It's like, you know what? Like, we're required to be in 3 days a week now, but like, I've been going 5 just because, you know, I want to make sure, like, you know, the bosses know me a little bit more, and they say that like I have more room to get a promotion if I'm in the office. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, you know, to become less expendable, and, you know, you got to be seen more. And, you know, if you're seen more, you know, people will like you more. And the more they like you, the harder it's going to be for them to fire you. So the reason why I think this matters for the fall push is because technically speaking, we tend to see a lot more people go back to work, especially the last 4 years now, going back to the office as we enter into the fall season. And that's one I'm going to watch with this fall push is like, will the people that are scared of possibly losing their jobs and the businesses start forcing people back to work? Because the other thing I'm thinking of, because like I talked to a lot of business owners, okay, and they say, you know, like, hey, we're going to start cutting some people. Like I read an article that said that like 60% of like this one job at like Chase is going to be fired because like they just, or was it 90%? It was some absurd number. It was a big number of people are going to be fired that does like some job because AI pretty much takes it. Like, and if I'm there, you know, I'm gonna like, or if those people that come there, I'm gonna be less likely probably to fire them. And I think a lot of people are seeing we're hearing a lot of our guys that are running the company saying that like, you know, they're gonna have to make these decisions soon. You know, and I think, you know, they're forcing more people to go back to work, and I think that's a good way for them to kind of clean the fat. So if they got to fire 60% of people and they say, hey, you got to be, you know, at the office 5 days a week now, and you got a bunch of these people who are complaining like, oh, I don't want to do it. You know what's happening. Here's what's going to happen. The business owners will be like, okay, well, these 5 people are complaining, and they're not coming back in. And then, you know, big JP Morgan comes down and says, hey, Chase, you guys got to fire 60% of these people. And he's like, do we have to do 60? Like these 5, they're expendable. You know, we told them to come back to the office. They gave us a hard time. They're gone. But like, let's keep these. And, you know, I'm talking to business owners and they're telling me, I'm not saying Chase, like I don't want to get sued. Like I'm not saying, I'm just using Chase as an example. Let's be crystal clear on that. Like I'm using that as an example. I'm not saying that's them. Nor did I talk to anybody at Chase. So big disclaimer. I'm just using it as a big what if. My point is that like, you know, these companies are, I know they're having these type of conversations. And I think that a lot of people know that. And because of that, I think we're going to start seeing more people go back to work. If more people go back to work, I do think that we're going to start seeing the downtown market come back. I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense. And I've been saying this for about 18 months now, where I really thought the downtown market would come back. And we are seeing it get better. I mean, inventory levels have hit the lowest all year this year compared to the last 5 years, okay? And we are seeing places move. Like I'm actually like selling places. Like I got like where I used to live, there's units in there that I've sold this year that I guarantee if I had last year, I wouldn't sell. Like no chance. And there's a lot of 1 bedrooms that I'm selling. In fact, I just sold like a 2 bedroom with like multiple bids in River North. And like, couldn't give that place away like 2 years ago. So I know it's coming back. But when you look at places that are like going back to 90s pricing and you're looking at like a lot of inventory sitting, we know it's nowhere near back. And at the same time, I saw some place in Lincoln Park get listed like 9.25 the other day. And like, you know, my client bid like $1 million and they said, they laughed at us and said we're in the top 10, you know? So it's like, you know, or top 5, sorry. So it's like, you know, it shows you that like there's still a big difference. But during this fall push, and with more people going back to work, and with artificial intelligence taking, you know, a lot of these entry-level white-collar jobs, will that change, right? Will that make the market? I'm not saying that we're going to see like a gangbuster fall market downtown. My question is that, and a trend I'm going to watch is, do we think that's going to get better? Will the tale of 2 cities start to close that gap, right? Because real estate goes in 5-year cycles. We're in the 5th year of a 5-year cycle. We're already seeing what once were untouchable markets slow down. Florida's, you know, dying right now, like with prices, they're dropping. You know, Texas, California, you know, Idaho. We're starting to see, you know, chinks in these places' armors. Nashville's starting to kind of take a hit. I read a nationwide statistic that nobody's getting asking prices. You know, we're seeing a lot of stuff about, you know, inventory sitting for longer across the country. Not in Chicagoland. Somebody's like, well, Chicagoland's doing good. I get it. But I'm saying is that like it's something to watch. And if the hottest markets are starting to kind of die down a little bit in other parts of the country, how long will it be to our outskirts start to die down a little bit more and then make our downtown markets rise? Again, I think personally we're probably 2 years away from that really happening, but I think this fall push is one to watch of where it's going to change. Because another indication I've been seeing with this push is being close to public transportation. I had 2 people late last night tell me that they were looking at a property. One's this superbly nice couple. And they were like, hey, we went to a place in Roscoe, but it was like a little bit further away from the train. And then I had this other like extremely nice couple that loved this place, but they're like, well, now the wife is going back, 5 days a week and they want to be closer to the Brown line, So like both these couples said the same thing. It's like, man, 2 years ago, nobody would have brought that up again, right? So they both passed on the places they saw. And it's like, okay, well, if public transportation is starting to creep up on people's lists, people are starting to talk about this more, like how long till people care about everybody being close to public transportation? And then how long is it going to be like, well, I like the fact that I could roll out of my bed and walk to work, right? Because how convenient is that? And that's a lot of people, like that's a lot of the traders and lawyers and stuff, why the Loop was so popular buying places. Like these guys got to be in the office by 5 a.m., and if like you live in Lakeview and like, it's an extra 40 minutes, you get to sleep in if you live in the Loop compared to being up north, and if you're waking up at, if you got to be in by 5, you're getting up around like 4:30, 4:15 at least, but if you got to be in Lakeview, that means you could be, waking up at 3:45 in the morning. So you either wake up at 3:45 or you wake up at 4:15. For a lot of people who need sleep, I don't need sleep, but a lot of people are like, I'll take that extra half hour sleep and live closer to my work. So like these are the things when we talk about like where do the markets go, like I don't know why this type of stuff isn't brought up, right? And how is that going to affect the fall market? And this is important to watch. I think the fall push is really important to watch because it's going to predict where the 26 market's going to go. And these predictions and things that I'm watching as we head into the fall push is one of the reasons of how I try to predict where the spring market's going to go, right? Because I think all of this kind of adds up together. I think it's all interconnected. It's widely interconnected. What about what do I think the fall buyer is going to be like? I've said this before. Fall buyers they're difficult beings. Okay, fall buyers tend to be more cautious, and like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've said this before. I had a couple clients comment on this, and they're like, "Well, I know what you think about us, and like I'm a fall buyer. You don't like us. It's not that I don't like you. That's like I like everybody. I don't care like what you are. I categorize the buyers because like I think it's easier for everybody to understand like what they're dealing with, right? Like fall buyers are more cautious. They feel prices are really going to fall. And I talked about it in the last podcast. I'm not going to repeat that. But like they just think prices are really going to kind of plummet. And they just get a little bit more hesitant to pull the trigger because it's their life savings. And they just think, the world's going to end. And so they need a little bit more time. They also need a little bit more reassurance, right? So they're the type that need their parents to tell them it's going to be okay. I'll tell you, like, fall buyers ask me more than any other buyers if I think they're making the right decision. They'd be like, do you think it's good buy though, right? Like, you agree with this? Like, do you think this is good? And like, if I think it's good, I tell it to them. And I'm like, listen, if I thought it was bad, I would just tell you it's bad. Like, I'm in sales. Like, I make money if you buy. So it's always in my best interest to agree with you. But anybody who's ever worked with me, if I think it's a bad buy, I always tell you, like, I think it's bad. Like, we'll just buy something else. Like, to me, it's like when you're in sales, like, if you convince somebody to buy something and they don't like it, like, you're only going to be in trouble in the future. Like, I compare it to like going out to a restaurant, right? You go out to dinner, okay, and you have the best meal in your life. Like, somebody brings up the restaurant, you may like be like, oh yeah, I had a great experience there. And like, realistically, you're probably not going to talk about it that much. But if you go to like a hot restaurant and it's terrible, you tell everybody you know. Everybody know that place sucked, blah, blah, blah. It was even mentioned. You like bash it about it's the worst place in the world. Don't go there, blah, blah, blah. And that's how sales are. That's what I always tell people is like, if I crush it, that's probably the bad thing about being good at your job is that like, if you crush it, like people are like, it's great. It's nice. Like some people sing our praises. We appreciate our clients that do, but it's rare. Like people are just kind of like, yeah, he did good. But if you do really bad, they're going to tear you apart. And so that's why I always tell clients is that like, listen, yeah, I'll get a sale today if I lie to you, but like, and you hate it, then like I'll never see you again, and you're gonna trash me to anybody you ever know, and that's not gonna give you any business. But I do feel like these fall buyers need more reassurance of me telling them that it's gonna be okay, and they need that hand holding a little bit more, and they need to have their parents' reassurance. And I probably see more buyers bring friends and family members during the fall and winter markets because of this, and I don't think it's a bad thing. If somebody out there's watching this, be like, oh, he's saying this, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not. I'm just saying that's what the fall buyer. So when you ask me what's the fall buyer like, that's what the fall buyer's like. I'll compare it to the pool. I've said this a million times. I'll say it again. A fall buyer gets their swimsuit on. They tell everybody they know they're going to the pool. They're calling everybody up. They're like, hey, meet me at the pool. Meet me at the pool. Let's go to the pool. They go to the pool. They look at everybody. Everybody's in the pool swimming. They circle the pool. Dip their toe in the water. and they leave. That's a fall buyer. Like, spring buyer just, they got their swimsuit not even halfway on. They're already jumping in the water. It's just a different mentality. And that leads me to the fall pessimistic. People in the fall are more pessimistic about the marketplace. And that fall mentality catches on. I think a lot of it has to do, just with our mentality. I tell people all the time, real estate's a game. The more the more you know how the game's played, the better you do at it, right? Because like in the fall, it gets darker earlier, right? Like you kind of get just a little bit. I think a lot of people get a little bit more depressed, and I think that depression kind of kicks over to the market, and I think people just have a little bit more of a negative attitude. And that's why I talk about like the fall buyers. They're more pessimistic too, so that adds to the thing. So it's dark out, it's cold, it's kind of that shitty weather a lot of times. And then you walk into this vacant place, and people are like, "Oh, this place sucks," and I think the price is going to drop. And it's just that negative attitude. That's all it is. It's just this negative attitude. But that catches on like wildfire. And agents also have a big negative attitude. This is the one that drives me the most nuts. Is that newbie agents that have been in the business 5 years or less, are probably some of the worst people to be around during this time, because they add to the problems more than anybody. And then they convince their buyers, and that's what makes a fall buyer a little bit worse. I can't tell you, and I won't name any names, but like this year I'm going to actually write down your names. I'm going to call you out on a podcast. That's what I'm going to do this year, just because it drives me nuts so much. And then I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to call you out if you do it to me, and then I see you promoting differently in the spring. Meaning that, like, let's use an easy name. Just a made-up name, sorry. It'll be October, and John Smith will make an offer on one of my listings and tell me that the world's going to end, and next year's going to be the year the market crashes. And I'll be like, no, it's just October, dude, and it's always a little bit slower in October, and like prices are always a little bit softer. And then John Smith's going to tell me, no, he knows. His managing broker told him that the prices are going to drop in 26 and that it's going to be the worst market ever, and I don't know shit, and he knows everything because he's done 5 sales in his life, and I don't know who he is. And like these are always like newbie agents that they don't know who the players are, right? Like they don't know who like the all-stars are. They're just guys. And then I could be a jerk when somebody tells me that I don't know what I'm doing and they know what they're doing. And if that's like a trigger thing for me, because I'm like, all right, dude, like, I always tell people I let them have 3 punches. I'll give you 1. All right, you put me down. You got it. Then I'll be like, you don't understand. Like, we're at a big company. I'm at, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, that's 2 punches. You go for that third, and then they go for the third. I'm like, all right, dude, like, just remember like your entire lifetime sales, like what we did on a weekend. Okay. So like, let's just remember that, but like, I don't want to have to go there, but like sometimes if you get pushed enough, you kind of got to go there. I'm trying not to even go there and just bury him later on, which is pretty much what I'm telling him to do now. So if John Smith like that says that in the fall, what we're going to do is we're going to keep his name, and then if we see him on any social media or anything like that, and he says in February, like the market's raging, it's the best market ever, I'm going to be like, hey, in October, this guy said that he thought the market was going to fall, and now in February he thinks it's the best market ever. This is why you don't want to work with a guy like that, right? Because they just make stuff up. They're a prisoner of the moment. And that to me is like the biggest problem in the marketplace, and why I do think that sometimes the fall market can be worse than it is because when you got your so-called experts telling you what's going to happen and you're a first-time buyer and you have no idea what's happening, they're going to listen to that person. And then that's going to create worse, because then that person probably has got 2 buddies that are buying, and then they'll be like, well, my guy told me this. He's very confident when he said it, so that must be true, and then that spreads. It spreads like a wildfire. So, we have to also watch out for the fall pessimistic mentality. So when I talk about us being a fall push, I know it all sounds negative. It's just like these are some of the barriers that you have to work around that's going to happen this fall. So even though I do think the market's going to be strong, and I do think we're going to see some sales, you're going to see some people who didn't build up a good enough book of business, so they're going to think negative. So part of that mentality is, a lot of people don't plan for the fall. So this leads to this pessimistic attitude, and this applies to buyers, this applies to sellers, this applies to agents, this applies to everybody. And the fact that like a lot of people travel a lot June, July, and August. They travel a lot, right? I mean, even myself, I don't take any vacations all year. I do a small vacation in July and small vacation in August, and then I'm done for the rest of the year, right? But like a lot of people don't do like these 3 or 4 day trips. They do like 3 or 4 week trips. They'll do multiple of them, and then they blow off all their clients. So then they, people, get back settled in after Labor Day. And a lot of agents, they spent all their money. They got no money left. And then they haven't been working on their business the last 3 months because they've been traveling a lot. So they have no pipeline. And then the bills come end of September and they're freaking out. So what do? They got a lot of pressure. You know, and that pressure builds up. And then what they do is they take it out on everybody else. So then they start telling everybody else like the market's failing because they can't pay their bills. They think the market's failing. And then that's part of the pessimistic attitude. So these are things you have to kind of watch out for in the fall market. And all of this stuff applies to where the fall market goes. All of it adds up. And these are all the things I calculate and I look at. And I'm like, I know this is going to happen. I know for a fact it's going to happen. So when somebody says something, we can't say that like, oh, the market's not as good as I thought it would be. It's like, we can't talk about how good I am at my job or how bad somebody else is at their job. We have to look at the market as a whole. So keep that in mind when you hear these type of things going on in the marketplace. Do not pay attention to the overall pessimistic attitude that you'll hear from some people. Just look at the charts and the graphs. Look at the numbers. Look at the sales. Look at the market time. A big one I want to watch in the fall push is going to be single-family homes and duplex downs. These two are the hottest markets in the front part of the year. The reason they are is because we're tied to the rental cycles like we've talked about a million times. And that's when you have the least amount of inventory because a lot of people selling those have kids and they want to move the burbs. And the burbs inventory is the thinnest out there. So they have nowhere to go. They have nothing to find. They have people that they have kids that they've paid to be in daycare or school. So they want to pull them out. So they don't list them till June. And then, a lot of people chase, spring pricing. So they overprice them. It sits. And then we're in the fall. They drop the price down way below where it's sold in the spring. And then there's no market for them because there's not as much demand for them. So watch big duplex downs and single families this year. I really want to see them how they perform this fall. I think they're going to do very well because they've been flying. I just don't think they're going to go as crazy as they would in the spring. So a good example would be something comes up even in the summer for $1 million and it sells for 1.1 in March. I think that place that comes out at $1 million that goes for 1.1 in March is going to go to $1.05 million in October. So it's still a good number. It's still a strong number. It's just not as strong. So my point when I say, I don't think they're going to perform as well, let's also remember I'm talking about they're just not going to be as crazy. What do I think about rates with the push? I mean, rates are at an 11-month low right now. They might be at a 12-month low today. Who knows? They're bouncing around. They're going to be anywhere from a 10 to 12-month low. They're doing very well, like very well. And there's every indication that the government's putting a lot of pressure to get rates down. And I do think rates will drop. I don't think rates are going to drop to 4%. Okay, I've said this a million times. The days of like rates being down at 2 to 3% is like when your parents said that rates are 17 to 19%. That's not going to happen again. But I do think the lower rates are going to help us have a push. And the other thing that's going to help us have a push is going to be the economy. The economy's doing very well. Stock market's doing well. Job market's doing very well. Even though there's a lot of negativity out there in the mainstream media, we have to look at like the actual numbers. Like, I'm not saying things aren't affordable because somebody out there is gonna be like, well, you're not sensitive to my needs because I'm not doing well. But I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I don't feel bad for anybody. I'm saying that overall though, the economy is very strong. It's hard. There's no denying that. The job market, job loss is not bad right now. Okay, as of today, and we're expecting some rate cuts, which I think is going to help this fall push happen. How is the fall market this year going to be compared to last year? I think last year was the election. Remember, it was election season. I talked about it being a frightful fall. I said it would be the worst fall market we've seen in 4 years. And I believe statistically that I was correct on that. I'm going to go on a limb and say this is going to be the best fall market we're going to see in 4 years. Okay? I think it's going to be hard to beat 22. All right? So this is more of like a hope than I feel 100% confident on. I think we might, like, if you had asked me, like, realistically, gun to my head, my life depends on it. Do I think we'll outperform, like, one of the best ones, like a 21 or 22? Probably not, but I don't know, man. Because, like, if you remember 22, the rates bumped up at the end of the year, and, like, it was, like, I remember, like, front part of 22, we were, like, I think we were set to do $500 million in 22. Like, that's how, like, if we did, like, this is what we did the first 2 quarters, this is what we should do the last 2 quarters. No, $400 million, not 500. Sorry, we're set to do $400 million, and then like we fell off a cliff. Like fourth quarter of 22 was like probably the worst fourth quarter I think I've ever had. It was awful because that's when it went from like 2.5 rates, and then like it shot up like 6.5, and everybody's like, oh my god, like just like pulled the emergency brake, and then 23 wasn't like a great year overall, and then 24 was great, and now 25 is even better. But like I look at that and look at 21 and 22, it's like I don't know. I think it's possible when I'm seeing the market and what's happening in it, in Chicago itself, I think it can happen. So I'm going to tell you that I think, I'm going to clip this now. Girls, this is going to be easy to clip. Maybe if I say clip like 5 times, it'll be easier to come up. clip, I do think that we're going to have probably the best fall market in 4 years. And I think it's going to be one to watch, because if a lot of people, like, for sellers, are like, well, should I wait till next year? It's like, well, next year you never know what can happen, right? I mean, statistically speaking, a spring market's always going to be better than a fall market. But depending on what type of property you have, again, it's all relative, because I get a lot of sellers like, should I wait? It's like, it's all relative to what you got. But, like, I do think that, like, when I look at what's happening, I think it's going to be a good market. And if things sell and people get good prices, that encourages other sellers to not wait and put it on the market, which means that there's more sales. So that's the one that we have to watch. And I do think that the market's performing well enough that we are going to see a lot of sellers go in the market, which is going to create more sales. So I think we'll be in a strong position. Lastly is, how does a fall push? If we have a strong fall market, how does that compare to like a February or March? We'll never compare to a February or March. September, October, even if it's like the best September, October we've had in 4 years, which I think is going to happen, even if it is, it's never as good as like a February, March. It's just not. It's a different. When I say it's gonna be good, it's like good for September, October, like really good for then. But like the best September ever is probably like the worst March ever. Well, let's not be that dramatic, but it's not that great. Okay, you can't compare it. It's uncomparable. So this is gonna be one to watch. We're gonna do an update on how September's performing at the end of September. Got some good stuff coming out with AI and things of that nature we're gonna discuss. But thanks for listening to Laricy Live.